Hi, I'm Jared Logan, and this is GM Toolbox from the Stream of Blood. In this series, we show you how to DIY your favorite tabletop role-playing games, taking rules from one and inserting them into another to make them better. Kind of like transplanting a baboon heart into a human body. So let's say your players have created their characters for your tabletop role-playing game, and they're excited because they've created characters who have rich backstories. Their characters have secrets. Their characters have potential romantic plots. They have goals. Their characters have dreams, except you never really get to get into all that because you're kind of busy exploring the dungeon. You want to explore those things that the characters have in their backstories. You want to explore those goals. And to do that, you need downtime. If you've played a tabletop role-playing game, you probably know what downtime is. I mean, almost every game has it. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's the point where you come up out of the dungeon and you spend all that gold on weapons and items. In Call of Cthulhu, it's probably the time when your investigator spends a couple months recovering at the sanitarium instead of sneaking around Dunwich. Almost every game has a downtime mechanic, but only one game is ballsy enough to advocate that you play entire downtime sessions, and that is the incredible Blades in the Dark by John Harper and Evil Hat. Traditionally, downtime is the part of the role-playing game where the player characters are allowed to rest, heal, restock their items, and upgrade their abilities. And you should spend a lot of time on these things because these are important parts of the game. If you spend an entire session on downtime, you can really explore how the character got that new ability, what they're planning to do with that new item. And these things are fun for players. But in addition to those traditional uses for downtime, downtime can also give you time to explore the character's backstory, their goals, and their personal plots. It shows you what the characters are doing when they're not adventuring, and that's really important because it gives the adventuring part of the game a lot more weight. They're leaving these like normal lives they have and they're going into a dungeon or they're going into a dangerous situation. It makes that more dramatic.
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
And finally, downtime can give all of your players a chance to really talk and consider the party's next move. So they don't feel like they're being made to act now, decide now, the action is happening. Which way are you going to run in? Instead, they can kind of carefully debate the merits of various actions for their party and decide the one they all agree on. So what you need to do is you need to plan an entire session where the characters are going to do nothing but downtime stuff. And then you need to pull out your copy of Blades in the Dark. Oh, where did I put it? God damn it. And then pull out your copy of Blades in the Dark that you bought and carefully go through the downtime chapter and apply all the things in Blades in the Dark to your game, whatever game you're playing. So first of all, there is payoff. Characters divvy up the rewards they got from the last adventure, deciding which money goes where and to who, which items or special benefits go to which characters. The second stage is heat. Your characters have generated fame or infamy by their actions. And in the stage where you talk about heat, you kind of make it clear to everybody how their last adventure has affected their reputation. Next is entanglements. Your characters don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a game world that you've created with all kinds of non-player characters who have opinions and their own goals, and your characters' goals have affected their goals. How do the player's enemies retaliate? And finally, downtime activities. This is my favorite one, and it's so important. This is the part of the game where the player characters get to choose the things that they want to do, the goals they want to pursue, the projects they want to try to bring to fruition. And a little side note to all of this is that downtime is a great session to run when you have no session planned. You had an adventure last session, it concluded, and you've been busy this week. Downtime is a great way to take the game because it's player motivated, it's player generated, and you don't have to come up with all the ideas that session. So let's apply the Blades in the Dark downtime chapter to a game of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. You guys have just finished with a dungeon last session. you're starting your next session. You, the dungeon master, have nothing planned, but you're okay because you're just going to take your characters through downtime. So one, you do the payoff. Guys, this is how much gold you found last time. How are you dividing it up? And also, here are the 2 magic items you found. Who is using them? Who's going to be taking possession of those magic items? Then you do heat. What decisions did the players make last session, and how does that affect their reputation? Keep track of this because it can add a really 3-dimensional depth to your game world. For example, if the party keeps doing nasty things to regular people, you might start to keep track of how other people are going to react to them. They've generated a bunch of infamy. And even though your bard has a really high charisma score, he might not be able to succeed on that deceive roll against the barkeep because the barkeep is aware of the party and their reputation. So you might say, hey, you guys, you've killed a lot of peasants and people in this town, and you set fire to buildings, and people have heard of you, and you now have disadvantage on that deceive roll against the bartender. Next, entanglements. And I recommend doing this just the way that Blades in the Dark does it. They come up with a little table that you roll on. For Dungeons and Dragons, maybe you make a D4 table. The entanglements will show how different groups in your game world are reacting to the PCs and interacting with them after they go on each adventure. So for our D4 standard Dungeons and Dragons world, maybe the first entry is that the Goblin clans unite to retaliate against the players. They put a price on the players' heads. Maybe the second entry is that Baron Banbridge has heard of their noble deeds and wishes to marry his daughter to one of the players. Maybe the third entry is that the Thieves Guild has heard that the player characters have built up a large sum of gold, and the Thieves Guild is thinking that they would very much like to get their fingers on that money. And finally, maybe there's a new quest hook. The priests of Ilmater have heard of the players' great deeds and begged them to come and clear their shrine of monsters. Roll, and you get new story hooks. You get potentially the next adventure if that's what the characters decide to do. And you've generated more story while simultaneously making the world feel 3-dimensional, like it reacts to how the players play the game. Finally, downtime activities. This is where the players choose their activities and plots and goals that they want to pursue while they're having downtime. And you could run this just like you run it in Blades in the Dark. It's a game. There's a limited amount of time. Each of you get 2 downtime activities to engage in. If you spend a little coin, just like in Blades in the Dark, maybe you can get a 3rd or 4th downtime activity. And the activities are the things that they would do in town while they are outside of the dungeon. They might rest, recover, heal their wounds. If they have a magical disease or some kind of a madness that they've earned in the dungeon, they can cure that. They can also spend their gold, shop for items. Let them take time with that. Players enjoy that so much. Allow them to have a little shopping trip. And with a downtime session, you can give it the time and the attention that it deserves. Then there's also the reduce heat action in Blades in the Dark. Well, in Dungeons and Dragons, we're not criminals. We probably don't need to reduce heat, but we could have some sort of downtime activity called Gain Renown, which allows you to improve your reputation. Remember that barkeep I mentioned where the bard has disadvantage on his rolls to deceive him because you've created a bad reputation for yourself? Gaining renown would allow them to fix that reputation by going and carousing in the tavern and telling, stories of their noble, brave deeds. And finally, there's my favorite downtime activity in Blades in the Dark, and that's the long-term project. This is the part where your player characters get to choose goals that they have in the long term, things they want to achieve in the long term, like wooing the Baron's daughter or joining the Thieves Guild. And I would give them a roll using a skill each time to pursue these activities. I would say, you're going to have, there'd be a chart or a clock like they use in Blades in the Dark. And you'd say, look, you're going to have to succeed at this roll 12 times in order to join the Thieves Guild or in order to woo the Baron's daughter. And so you have them roll a skill and they fill in successes. And over a series of sessions, over a series of downtime sessions, they are able to achieve that goal. This is the meat in the role-playing sandwich. This is why people get into role-playing games and want to play these games, because yes, they want to go and have adventures in your dungeon. They want you to challenge them with your scenarios as a game master, but they also want to express themselves through the character. And when you let them engage in their own long-term projects, you're saying, yes, you affect the game world. You have a say in where this story goes. Finally, Downtime is a great opportunity for the entire party to decide its next move. You can give them all of the options that are out there and let them decide what their next mission or quest will be. Do they want to go and try to finally break the goblin clans once and for all? Or do they want to go to a fancy ball at Baron Banbridge's mansion? It's up to them. And by giving them the choice of what their party does next, you make the game 1,000 times more fun. Because not only does it feel like they're in a living world where a lot of things are going on, but it feels like they get to affect the story. But if you're going to give them choices, and if you're going to give them meaningful choices, you need downtime so that they can take their time and carefully examine those choices and decide on the one that they want to do best. That's it for this episode. If you like what you saw, please subscribe here on YouTube. We stream 3 times a week on Twitch, so you can see some of these techniques in practice. And if any of these tips helped you, or if you have your own tips, a different way that you like to do it, please feel free to sound off in the comments below. Until next time, happy gaming, you son of a bitch.